Hello everyone. The voice of fashion is used to asking questions that no one asks. Often we don't bring this searchlight home. We debate, but behind the doors. This debate on Fashion Week FDCI into LFW that just concluded in Delhi, one of the biggest ever in terms of sponsor heft in the history of Indian fashion weeks, has brought many questions to the show. Questions that need to be asked at least, even if some of them will remain unanswered. Fashion week is over. Now let us wake up. Is to understand what worked, since there is conversation in the industry and some outside it saying that fashion week didn't really work. Where was the fashion media? Where are the stories? Where are the good shows? Can you point out trends? Yes, we can. Let me first bring you to that first light that 2 days back, when the Voice of Fashion team brought its notes back from the ground, I suddenly had a moment saying, let's not report, let's not waste our time reviewing shows. What are we reviewing? Who is reading? I'm throwing this question back to my team, inviting them to tell you how that question may have crossed their mind at all or how they answered it.
I began covering Fashion Week from the first show, and I've watched more than half of the shows, which is a lot to say for an event that had up to nine shows per day. But what I found often was that the shows were so mediocre, both in terms of collection, imagination, sometimes the way they had been executed, that it wasn't simply a matter of just giving it a good review or a bad review. There was simply nothing to write more often than not. And for writers, journalists, other content creators who may be spending their entire day at these events, there was simply not enough to really reflect on or ponder about. Of course, there were people all around. There were influencers and bloggers, there were guests at the shows, but in terms of an overall ambience and quality of work, there simply wasn't enough that happened over the last 5 days that could be worth reporting and gleaning an insight on the industry.
Sohini, was it a relief for you that I said that let's stop reviewing, let's find snackable ways of pushing out content, because after all, we are at work?
Yes. I think I was tired by the end of day one.
Right.
And the rest of the days weren't much brighter. Of course, there were a few good shows. It's not, and perhaps we can even say even a bad collection had a few good pieces, but there simply wasn't enough to talk about or feel excited about, which I think is quite disheartening for an event that is happening in a physical format on a fairly massive scale after 2 years of digital events.
So Snigdha, I remember you coming back from the Shantanu and Nikhil and JJ show. You liked some resonances of both of them. When Sohini says it's not like there wasn't a good show, what is a good show today? How should we describe the good show for our readers?
Well, I can only speak from my own personal experience, and this was my 10th fashion week. I attended my first fashion week in 2012. So I think it also depends on where you're coming from and what you've experienced in the past as a journalist, as a writer. And I can say that there was a sense of imagination lacking, and that I saw in terms of design mostly. I did like some of the choreography. I liked, the new atelier format, which was, you could do experimental things. Designers like Rimzim Dadu, in fact, really moved me because, there were people sharing their stories and they were love stories and you could relate to it. So I had my moments where I felt like, okay, sitting here is worth it. And even if after so many years, I'm not thinking, why am I still here? Or what am I doing? There's so many younger people doing this. So there were moments that I liked. But then I came back from Shantanu and Nikhil and both the JJV show. I think I liked both of them also because I sort of knew about their designs and I have followed them. But I think my expectations are more from the emerging names, from more exciting shows that let me down a lot of times. And even with JJV and Shantanu and Nikhil, again, I loved the collection, but as a reporter, you're supposed to question all of it, like who's buying it, who can wear it, what are the business prospects of it. And I could not, at a lot of times, only not for those two shows, could not answer those questions.
Let's take this to Ektaa. Ektaa, you were working with the Indian Express before this. The expectations of your publishing organization, your newspaper, must be different from the Voice of Fashion, and yet you have a cultivated eye and ear towards fashion. What is it that was irking you at this edition of FDCI into LFW?
That something was a distinct lack of thought and a voice within the collection that they were presenting. Even a brand like Human, I have disagreed with them massively in the past on what they have executed, but they always had a strong voice. You could disagree with it, but there was something to contend with, something to think about and come back and be like, no, I don't agree with them. But here, this collection was so weak. It's as if they've hurriedly put together anything that was lying in their warehouse and they just brought it out, ki ek hafte mein we have to take this out. Even something like a Shivan and Naresh, who have a distinct body of work and they project themselves in a certain way. This current show looked really like a quick DIY kind of thing. So to me, what am I, when I come out of a show, am I thinking, is it so bad that it's good? Or has it moved me? Has something stayed with me? None of the above.
Let us ask Disha, our youngest colleague, who is a NIFT student and who's interning with us. Presumably, you would have had stars in your eyes once upon a time for Fashion Weeks, and for Fashion Weeks, front row and the stars. How are you reacting to Fashion Week? Are the stars still there, and where are they, in your eyes or somewhere else on the ground?
I think the most, I was disheartened to see, I was following the show on the lives, the FDCI live, the Lakme Fashion Week live. So it was very disheartening to just see the number of people watching the live. It never went up more than 500 people at a time. And I was just shocked. I was wondering if I'm the only one watching it because I have to, or because, are there no other people in the country who are wishing to, just be out there and see what the country's fashion is, because Lakme, the Fashion Week is a very big deal. It always has been. We've read about it. But coming to it at this stage, when I also, want to keenly report it soon enough, it felt like there's no charm left to it anymore, maybe.
But to bring perspective back to the ground, people often ask, what are the trends? What were the trends? It's a question that must be asked of us. Now, strangely enough for me, somebody who's covered Fashion Weeks for so many years that I really can't put a year to the number, that there are trends. The trends are that the sponsors have grown bigger. The trend is that they are bringing more money to the table. Several lakhs are put into each show. These lakhs are given to designers. To the tune of 20 to 40 lakhs are given to designers to bring their clothes, to make their clothes and show. It does not include the model pool, the hair and makeup, the conveniences allowed by the Fashion Week body. So the top trend is newer, heftier sponsors entering the fray. The fact that we discussed as a team, and this is something I want to tell the readers of the Voice of Fashion, that we did think we'd have better stories to do after Fashion Week was over, and one Sohini Dey already did, which is fibers and fabric at Fashion Week. That's a clear trend that tells you what is going on, who is dealing with which kind of fibers, where is the fashion industry moving. The biggest trend perhaps was that influencers are the front row capital. Not so much the film star perhaps, who may still walk the ramp and then get some likes and some dislikes and the politics of Instagram. But clearly there is money and matter coming from influencers. Instead of resenting, as some people in the fashion media might, or they might find the change difficult to absorb, the fact is that influences matter to this great game of what's moving, what's selling, what should be shown. That's trend number 2. Trend number 3 is that there is an over-styling that fashion designers seem to need. Over-styling often is like the Indian pickle. You eat more of the pickle if your core meal is bland. There is something about over-styling to the extent that a number of designers end up looking similar because of the styling impulses. So it's not like there are no trends. Unfortunately, we are not able to find trends in shapes and sizes and silhouettes and colors, and that's an irony. But let's ask the team, did you pick up any fashion trends? And let's ask Paramita, our copy editor, were you interested in even editing the stories? Paramita, you answer first, that we were bringing back.
I was interested. I mean, I liked the copy all were like well written, but what I kind of missed, maybe because of my, general newspaper background, is that you're kind of always looking for a contrarian viewpoint. So that I think maybe is sort of a nugget for the future, that maybe we could sort of showcase shows we didn't like, or, write with a bit of a gallows humor, to put it in a sort of other way, kind of, pull the pants down and sort of see fashion in a little more naked sort of light.
Are we shy of critiquing? Is something bothering us? Who are we worried about? Who are we worried of?
When have we ever been shy of critiquing?
I don't think we've ever been shy, but I do feel like you need certain motivation to even write, or you need commentary has to be inspired. Even if you have a contrarian view, even that has to come from because as a journalist, if you're making an argument, you have to make sure that that argument is also backed by facts and by a strong voice. But I think I personally did not think that even if I disliked certain things, there also it's very different when you're sitting there and experiencing it, because I might not like a Siddharth Titler show, but the amount of people there, the amount of people cheering for him, the amount of people cheering the fact that there's a male model in a skirt, the amount of people cheering the jewelry, the amount of people applauding his efforts, there are so many views. So I think it's, as a journalist also, we have to be discerning as to, even if you're pulling someone down, we also have the power to do that, but when to do it. And I think this time I wasn't motivated enough to do it.
Yeah, I think the aesthetics of what is bad can also be inspiring, and it's the lack of inspiration, really, because like I think we were discussing earlier, there is something called it's so bad that it's good and you enjoy it. There is a certain pleasure in consuming it. But I did not experience that at all, which is also a disappointment. I mean, I walked into some shows just to see how bad it was, except the problem was it wasn't bad, it was boring.
How did you feel about influencers, this influencer party that it is? What do you think is wrong about it, if anything? Is there anything wrong with it?
I don't understand that world at all. I don't understand. I've been working for a decade. I've literally worked my way up from being an intern with notepads being thrown into my face and a copy being reworked and redrafted and everything. And even now when I'm writing, it's always with a certain sort of like, I hope I'm not misquoting anybody, I'm not misrepresenting anything. I think like with the influencers, it is with what you bring, how many viewership, how many audience, how many eyeballs you bring. But what are they saying? They just praise everybody and anybody. What is their own voice? They like everybody, it seems. And everything that is sent to them and everything is a collab. So what are they standing for? I would like all of those influencers to tell me personally what they stand for, so that I know what they are. Here, they just seem like a billboard. You can put anything on a billboard.
But so why do you think designers want them in the front row?
The billboard effect.
I don't fully agree with that.
I don't agree with that either.
I think
it's
just
disagreements.
Yeah. No, I mean, as a team also, that's why we're a team, because we have disagreements. But I do feel like that there's a sense of sort of reality check even journalists need. When I'm sitting there in the front row, I can also see me maybe, or in the second row, third row, have not really cared about it, but I can also see the people next to me change, and I'm the one who's sitting there always. So it's a reality check for you, that where has content creation, I won't even call it journalism because that's separate, where has it moved? We already have paid media, we already have the billboard effect when it comes to the biggest newspapers in India. We don't have to name them. We all know that. I have worked for it. I have written paid content. So we do have to realize the commercial part of content creation too. And I think that's why influencers are such a big part of the ecosystem now, we can, of course, I mean, I also don't like all the work that they do, but the kind of attention that they can get. I've seen people, influencers, I don't know if they're getting paid for it or not, but I've seen them mentioning a small little brand on their Instagram story, and the next day that brand will have 100 orders, and a newspaper article may not do that for you. But I do think that influencers definitely have a place, and we might not agree with them, but as people who have written for so long, we have to find their relevance, because if designers are finding their relevance, the organizing bodies are, and giving them front rows, there is a reason to it. And
then they should also be equally open to being critiqued and questioned, and they also need to be
I actually
dynamic
do think,
with
having
it.
written about influencers for a few years, that they are very open to being critiqued. And also a lot of them, in fact, their influencers are more likely in personal conversations, and this I say this because I've sat with influencers at tables and they've said as much. The few times I've heard people openly in public events talk about how Fashion Week is boring because there simply isn't enough content, are not journalists. They're influencers. There are influencers who will say that they will simply not cover Fashion Week completely because it is not worth the effort, or a certain fashion show. I personally think that we tend to see influencers the way people outside fashion tend to see fashion.
I genuinely feel that they have that place because they have that certain number of followership, and there's a reason why people are following them, because they feel that they kind of are a part of their life. That individualization of what their life is and what they like is why we're following them.
Paramita, by reading stories that we bring, or the conversations that we bring in our kitty, does fashion interest you?
For me, fashion stands for harmony and beauty, and I've always been interested in that. So, I mean, I follow it in that sense. And but what I look forward to and I enjoy the kind of fashion writing I enjoy is when they throw up ideas and conversations, and from the platform of fashion, it goes on to other conversations and other ideas. When I see that in a copy, that really excites me.
To circle back to our audience and our readers, we have dilemmas every day. Tokenism. Do plus size people get sometimes the worst clothes to wear? Must we bring on celebrities for the heck of it? Who really is a celebrity? Where is the voice? Why don't we critique enough the incestuous tie-ups and collaborations in fashion? I am editor-in-chief of The Voice of Fashion, which is published by Rise Worldwide. It comes under Reliance Brands. Half of these people were sponsors there. Am I allowed to critique? Will I lose my job? Or is it exactly this what the industry needs? This team brings heft to that one question. We are not enslaved. We are not bound by incestuous collaborations, though they may be working as ghosts and voices at the back of our minds. We have to free ourselves. I can tell you some of the team told you what their inferences were. I felt inadequate in understanding how to report a fashion week that has turned the corner. If it has turned the corner, it is upon those who call the fashion media, who call themselves the fashion media, and we are that team to find out ways, whether it is through criticism, critical appreciation, trend spotting, fibers, fabrics, people of meaning and people who are meaningless, to bring you the final filter. Are we able to do that? Should we be prepared in a different way? Next season, I'm going to ask each one of this team for one closing answer and then say goodbye. So Sohini, please, let's start with you.
The one thing I would like to see is simply better design, newer design ideas, better clothes, and not banking on ideas like scenography, celebrities, and the whole brouhaha to sort of capitalize and publicize it. Because the truth is, you can have all of that, but if your clothes are not good enough, you will not get traction or business beyond a few polite social media posts.
Also relevance, right? Like we would see a Paris Couture Week talking about the war in Ukraine, and Fashion Week says, okay, watch this, but maybe don't celebrate because there is a lot happening in the world. That sort of reflection is never there in our shows, in our collections. I'm not blaming the designers for it. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it that I don't even have to mention. But that sort of resonance of reality meeting fashion, as Paramita said, that fashion leading to other conversations, it would be great to see. And I might not be able to give examples right now.
Fashion needs to go beyond just looking pretty. Look at the power it wields, even with the intersection of Bollywood and the influencers, even with the huge numbers they bring. What change can they instrument? These are all things that they're not using to the maximum capacity. We can all pose in those clothes and the designers can source them, they can be paid collabs, but what more, what beyond after a 5-day event or one Instagram post or a feed? Things can be implemented, things you can stand for something in and look pretty at the same time in very well-made clothes. But the fashion industry need to introspect. You've had a 2-year break. We could have all introspected and come up with something more than what we have seen.
I would like for fashion to have that sense of intrigue return to it. I would really like to, just sit and anticipate what this show might bring, rather than just being, I know what direction it might take. I would like to really see that sense of intrigue come back to it.
Basically, I have a touchstone for anything or anyone who says or wants to do art, which is, if it is art, it must disrupt. I want to see disruption. Like, I want to see Tarun Tahlani do maybe complete 360, like go in an absolutely opposite direction. I mean, so those are the things that really excite me. I want to see disruption. I want to see real difference.
Disruption, and earlier, as Sohini said, away from the land of sartorial mediocrity. Using Snigdha's word, freshness and innovation, I think people who write and report on fashion also need freshness and innovation. That includes us. Perhaps I want to alert our reader as we say goodbye that retail is more interesting sometimes than fashion. The online space, which has flourished as the game to buy and what's happening, has taken away some of the excitement of fashion weeks. Bollywood stars, you can see them on Instagram and anywhere, and the real ramp is perhaps social media. TikTok and Instagram are the playing fields of those who earlier used to sit in front rows. There are many, many impulses at work. Together, the industry definitely seems to be an intersection where some rethink is required, mostly on the part of fashion designers who must bring us disruption, inspiration, things to write about. Thank you for watching. Please keep reading and looking at the voice of fashion. Thank you everybody in the team for being the team that you are. My honor and privilege every day to work with all of you.